This deadline being the deadline for a future potential U.S. war against China. How stupid do you have to be? How stupid are you to wave around these Rand Corporation documents and act like the U.S. isn't preparing all of their military equipment for 2027? It's really amazing, this new Prime Minister of Japan, Takaichi. It only took like 3 days for her to actually hold the office of Prime Minister of Japan. 3 days for this, one of Japan's first women to lead the country, or maybe the first woman to ever lead Japan. And within these like first few days, the decades and decades and decades of Chinese restraint against China has all been thrown out the window. Chinese aggression provoked by the Japanese and the U.S. agents in Taiwan has been reasserted. It just took like literally hours for this to go down. It's actually amazing. This Takaichi, who says she worships Margaret Thatcher, she considers Margaret Thatcher to be a hero. Hundreds are now calling for Takaichi to step down in the Japanese government. One of those individuals is this man right here. Japan's left-wing populist politician Taro Yamamoto, who said Japan is a puppet of the U.S. Take a listen to what he had to say. Japan is not an independent country. It is a colony of the U.S. I'm afraid that Japan is essentially a colony of the U.S. Prime Minister, do you think this country is a colony? It is a sovereign nation, she says. Of course, it presents itself as a sovereign nation, but if that's the case, why haven't the Northern Territories been returned? Why won't they be returned? Russia refuses to return the Northern Territories because it fears that the U.S. military would place a base there if the islands were handed back, right? Russia asked Japan to promise that it would not allow U.S. bases on the islands, but Japan declined. That's why they haven't been returned. If Japan cannot make decisions about its own affairs without needing the approval of the United States, then it cannot truly be called a sovereign nation. It's a colony of the United States. Why are military exercises that are not even permitted within the United States allowed in Japan? Ultra low altitude flights and various other activities. Why are they possible here? Because it's treated like a colony. Well, she got absolutely destroyed. Took 60 seconds for that. This woman is clearly not so intelligent. Chinese media personalities online are saying, we simply want to warn Takaichi, the Prime Minister of Japan, and the Japanese government she leads, do not attempt to militarily interfere in the Taiwan Straits. If they send the Japanese self-defense forces to intervene, those forces will be destroyed. If they manage to escape by luck, they will likely find no way home because by then, their bases in Japan will no longer exist. Of course, this is only a hypothetical statement, and I hope Tokyo will not be that foolish. Now, I'll say this is just a random but very prominent Chinese social media user that I follow, and I think they have interesting takes on matters such as this. But it's actually quite true. I think it's quite accurate what we are seeing right now. I mean, the whole debate, this whole issue that is fanning the flames right now between China and Japan is the flames are being fanned by Japan. Japan, the Prime Minister Takaichi was asked a question, if China were to reintegrate officially, Taiwan into mainland China, would this pose a legitimate military threat to Japan that would require Japan's self-defense forces to act? And she said, yes, it would. She essentially said that. She added a few more words, but that's essentially what she said. She basically said, if China does what it has long said it is going to do, then we will militarily respond. This is a huge departure from decades and decades of Japanese foreign policy, of which I will show you right now. This is the Sino-Japanese joint statement from 1972, September 29th. The government of Japan recognizes the government of the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China. This phrasing is quite literally the same phrasing as the joint communique, the One China policy that the U.S. also upholds from 1979, that the government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government of China, that Taiwan is but part of China and Beijing is its sole government. That is the One China policy. Japan has upheld it since 1972. The U.S. has upheld it since 1979. Australia upholds it. The UK upholds it. Pretty much all Western governments uphold it. They don't actually label Taiwan as a sovereign nation, but now the new Japanese prime minister is saying that if China peacefully reintegrates Taiwan into mainland China, then they will have to commit to a military response. This is from the Sino-Japanese statement of 1972 as well, but a longer version. The government of Japan, I'm reading right here, the government of Japan fully understands and respects this stand of the government of the People's Republic of China, and it firmly maintains its stand under Article 8 of the Potsdam Proclamation, which is right here. The terms of the Cairo Declaration shall be carried out, and Japanese sovereignty shall be limited to the islands of Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, Shikoku, and such minor islands as we determine. Now, there is some interesting movement from the Chinese over the past 24 hours that has caused a lot of concern on the pro-Japan, pro-Taiwan independence, the U.S. agents who support Ukraine, they support Israel, who support war on Venezuela. They are very, very concerned on social media. Visegrad24 being the main U.S. puppet account here who's concerned. Breaking. 4 armed Chinese Coast Guard vessels have intruded Japan's territorial waters around the Senkaku Islands. The islands are also claimed by China and by Taiwan. So China claims the Senkaku Islands, Taiwan claims the islands, and Japan claims the islands. Practically speaking, materially speaking, Japan administrates the government on the island. China claims to have some sort of a historical claim for the islands. China claims to do these legal patrol operations around the Senkaku Islands. This is something they've done for years. Right here, Senkaku Islands. Now, Russia does not get involved in this matter. Russia says, this is an internal matter between China and Japan. They don't even address the question of Taiwan, obviously. I mean, this is just silly. Taiwan claiming that they have control of the islands. So they say this is a sovereign matter. We are neutral on the issue. North Korea, I will also add, has the same stance. They say this is a neutral matter. We do not recognize China or Japan's sovereignty over the islands. But it is true that China did do a legal patrol operation near the Senkaku Islands earlier today. Tensions between China and Japan have again reached a peak after several Chinese armed ships entered Japanese territorial waters disputed near the Senkaku Islands, which Beijing calls Diao. According to official data from the Japanese Coast Guard, a total of 4 Chinese ships armed with heavy weaponry entered Japanese waters after previously circling the archipelago, whose sovereignty is long disputed by both countries. The Chinese authorities stated that this was a legal patrol operation aimed at protecting rights and ensuring respect for human rights in the area that China considers its historical territory. Tokyo, on the other hand, sharply condemned the incident, describing it as yet another provocation in a continuous series of violations of Japanese sovereignty. It's like, what is Japan talking about continued violations of Japanese sovereignty? It was Japan who started all of this bullshit, just like Ukraine started all of this bullshit when Zelensky went to the Vilnius summit and said, we'd love to be in NATO. We'd love to have NATO nukes in our country with Kamala Harris, right? It's the same thing. Japan started this. They said, if Taiwan is peacefully reintegrated into China, we're going to have a military operation to free them. The Japanese side has lodged an official protest and called on Beijing to urgently prevent the recurrence of such incursions as they significantly disrupt navigation, safety, and stability in the East China Sea region. The latest development occurred today, just one day after a sharp message from the Chinese Ministry of Defense stating that Japan will suffer a heavy defeat if it dares to intervene in the Taiwan issue. We also saw this from Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who came out and said, "Stop the propaganda that a Taiwan emergency is a Japan emergency. The truth is, to provoke trouble in the name of Taiwan is to invite trouble for Japan." Couldn't agree more with anything else. This is not Japan's affair. Japan is being used as a puppet by the United States to provoke China surrounding Taiwan. And yes, I will take my moment to gloat in the face of all those idiots online who are circling Rand Corporation documents saying, oh, the Rand Corporation claims that the U.S. is done intervening in China and Russia. They're going to focus on the Western Hemisphere. China has asserted itself, and the U.S. is no longer going to screw around in the East China Sea or the South China Sea. They're not going to. How stupid are you to wave around these Rand Corporation documents and act like the U.S. isn't preparing all of their military equipment for 2027, made by 2027, with the explicit aim, by the way, of 2027, this deadline being the deadline for a future potential U.S. war against China. How stupid do you have to be? China issues alert on overseas study in Japan. China's Ministry of Education released an overseas study alert urging Chinese students currently in Japan or planning to study there soon to assess risks carefully, take necessary precautions, and plan their studies prudently. Very interesting. So some diplomatic escalation as well. The PLA Daily came out and said if Japan intervenes in Taiwan, the entire country of Japan will be turned into a battlefield. Also, we had this from Bloomberg. A top U.S. admiral says South Korea's newly approved nuclear-powered submarine must be used for countering China. Called it a natural expectation given its strategic capability. Oh, yeah, well, of course, this sovereign country just developed its new nuclear submarine. Well, of course, the obvious option is you have to use that to provoke some conflict with China on behalf of the U.S. It's obvious, isn't it? Now, I will say the new leader of South Korea, pretty interesting guy. He's not all that he doesn't seem to be, I should say, as of right now. Things could change. Look at Zelensky from when he was campaigning and first entered office to where he is now. But the new leader of South Korea, he is not all that enthralled with the idea of this warmongering rhetoric against China and against North Korea, which is a very positive development, okay? But here's where we get into the biggest piece of the pie, folks. This is the biggest piece of the pie. This is the worst part of the story. The U.S. has officially committed to the first arms sale to Taiwan under Trump. So Trump is continuing the Biden era policy of arms sales to Taiwan, which is a direct, explicit violation of the One China policy. The Pentagon has announced that it has approved its first arms sale to Taiwan since U.S. President Trump took office in January. China, which views the self-governing island as part of its territory, and also, by the way, according to the One China policy, the U.S. also should. The proposed deal will see Taipei spend $330 million to acquire spare parts for the American-made aircraft that it operates, the U.S. Department of War said in a statement on Thursday. The purchase should help Taiwan with maintaining the operational readiness fleet of the F-16, C-130, and other planes. The spokeswoman for Taiwan's presidential office, Karen Kuo, welcomed the approval, claiming that the deepening of the Taiwan-U.S. security partnership is an important cornerstone of peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific. Actually, no, this is an important step in escalating conflicts in the Indo-Pacific and further provoking and prodding the Chinese into some sort of a US-backed conflict over Taiwan, the sovereign territory of the People's Republic of China. Not a good move. More warmongering from Trump here. Can't say I'm surprised. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.